want to get the true savour of fashion, you must look at informal clothes. They are usually much more representative than formal ones. Dress for grand occasions tends to be based on styles that become more or less fixed for at least a few years at a time. But with the things we wear every day, we can follow the caprices of fashion as rapidly as we please, or as our purses will let us. The students of the future are going to find it very hard to date this dress precisely. The expansive skirts and uncovered shoulders simply place it in the category of a ball dress about the middle of the 20th century. It would have been wearable for 3 or 4 years on end, except that, of course, the owner wouldn't have been likely to be seen in so striking a model more than a very few times. But this is the sort of thing that can be more or less pinpointed. We may not be able to say just when it goes out, but we can be quite clear as to when it comes in. Calmly as we may accept it now, this was the veritable new look, an original model from Christian Dior's first collection in 1947. This was also made by Dior, a gala dress for the wife of the French ambassador to wear at a state function in 1950. The new look was at first wildly controversial, and Dame Margot Fontaine, who wore this suit, was one of the adventurous women who were blazing a trail. The established fashion at the time was this. A really ardent campaign was fought on government level to keep this silhouette in and this one out. The boxy suit that had once looked the last word in chic went the way of all fashions. It passed out. And so, of course, did this. But this lingered much longer, because formal clothes never have the mood of the moment so strongly imprinted on them as the ones in which we can really let ourselves go. Here's the equivalent dress about the middle of the 18th century. It took years to come in and years to go out. But then, as now, informality was more experimental. And the clothes of every day went through many stages. For example, coming in by degrees through the 1750s, there were lighter colors, softer fabrics. There was the gown with its skirts looped up in panniers, seen often from the 1760s. And before the hooped skirt for formal use was finally abandoned, even the washable linen gown of the late 1770s, inspired by the costume of milkmaids, and free from all unwieldiness. That 18th century unwieldiness, however elegant and stately, must have imposed very severe restrictions on the wearer, as formal clothes seldom fail to do. The nearest parallel in the middle of the 19th century was this. It's about 1852, and it takes an expert to distinguish what changes of fashion had come about in the previous 10 years. The features that show you this one is 1842. Can you tell the difference? Even this one of 10 years later, 1862, is very much the same. The only striking alteration in evening dress during 20 years or so is that waists got higher and skirts wider. Yet, as to informal clothes, all kinds of things were being tried. We are looking now at day clothes of both the 1850s and the 1860s. We shall use a certain poetic license here, because our 1850s debutante wouldn't yet be playing croquet. That was the craze of the 1860s. The early Victorians were turning into mid-Victorians, and the little shallow bonnet has eclipsed the deep poke bonnet. More dashing still is the hat worn flatly on the top of the head. The later dress is buttoned down the front, a very new departure. These semi-formal evening dresses, though 10 years apart, still have back fastening, off-the-shoulders décolletage, and short sleeves of very much the same type. The informal sleeves have features more expressive of fashion, features that can be recognized and dated. In the 1850s, for instance, they're open at the ends with ruffles intended to recall the 18th century. The most significant change of all between the 50s and the 60s is in the skirt. The revolutionary innovation of the crinoline allowed glimpses of feet and sometimes even glimpses of legs. And what glimpses? Ball dresses, too, had crinolines underneath them, of course, but they made only a very slight change in the appearance of a skirt that reached the floor. By the way, don't let's forget to look at feet. Side-lacing half boots had been in vogue for at least 25 years, with very little variation. Then elastic sides came in and proved so comfortable that they, too, lasted a long while and were ultimately made with high heels, which looked very new indeed after half a century of entirely flat soles.